My name is Sol Vasquez, and welcome back to Inflight. It has been a long 2 months since the last time that we uploaded, and I'm really sorry that it has taken so long for us to get another episode out, but in real life complications between myself and Norm have just made it really hard to find times to record and to get guests on the show. But I believe that I can finally say that we are back posting as regularly as possible, and we're back with a really cool episode. So on today's episode, we have Patrick on, we have Frederick on, and we have Gabriel on. Now, Patrick you've heard from before. Patrick is the face of Canada for X-Plane. So he develops primarily Canadian scenery for X-Plane 11. However, Frederick and Gabriel are a part of this group called FSimStudios, who you may not have heard about if you are primarily on the X-Plane scene. And FSimStudios has done a lot of Canadian scenery as well, in addition to some other locations that they mentioned in this podcast episode. And Patrick, Frederick, and Gabriel all partnered together recently to bring Vancouver to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and also to bring it to X-Plane. So Vancouver is available for every single one of these platforms. It's not yet available for Microsoft Flight Simulator, but Frederick and Gabriel have allowed Patrick to release Vancouver for X-Plane 11, so that is already out. So today we are interviewing a group of developers who have all banded together in order to make the best Canadian scenery possible. And I can tell you from somebody who has seen all of their work and who has experienced their work that they really are doing amazing things for all their simulator platforms. So we had a really great conversation today. We talked about the Microsoft Flight Simulator SDK, which we tend to talk about most of the time whenever we have a developer on the show. We talked about coffee, we talked about engineering and all that type of stuff. It was a really interesting episode, and I learned a lot from them, and I think that you will learn a lot from them too, especially if you're new to developing or if you don't know that much about developing for any of the simulators. It's a great conversation. A few things to note about this episode. The first thing that you are going to hear immediately out of the gate is that Norm's audio sounds significantly worse than it normally does. And I wanted to get this podcast episode out earlier than it is getting out now, but I have been spending the past week or so trying to get it to sound as good as possible. I'm not exactly sure what happened, and I haven't bothered to look into it that much, but hopefully this issue won't happen again in the future. So Norm is going to sound like he's on a phone call, which he's not. And it might sound a little bit weird at points, but I did my best to make the audio sound as best as it could with basically what I was able to take from Norm's audio. So I hope that it's okay. And as I said in next episodes, this will not be the case. And also this is a pretty long episode, so definitely make sure that you have your popcorn ready for this one. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoy this podcast episode and that it was worth the wait. We have some exciting guests lined up. I promise you the podcast is not going anywhere after this. And once again, I'm really sorry for this break and the lack of communication. But regardless, let's get on with this episode. Hope you guys enjoy Inflight episode number 27.
Jeez, can't believe I'm actually a coffee fiend. You know, used to be a tea guy, and then I got my first shot of coffee, and that was it. It's done. There's nothing like it ever. With milk and sugar, by the way.
So you don't drink black?
No.
Oh, black is the way.
Come on,
Yeah.
really?
I don't really drink coffee. I'm more of a tea guy, so yeah, I guess I'm the only one here.
You haven't been doing those late nights.
I'm a tea guy.
Yeah, I hear you. Actually, coffee make me go to sleep at nights. If I drink it late at night, I don't stay up. I go straight to sleep, man.
What?
Then that seems a little counterintuitive for you drinking it in the morning then.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm a weird guy. I know. I admit it. But yeah. So you guys are the new conglomerate on the block, huh? FSimStudios. I like that, man.
Yeah.
When did you guys hook up and come about? How did this happen?
That's a long story actually. So first of all, I'm originally from Latin America. That's why there's probably a bit of an accent that I have. And being from Latin America, the community, the flight simulator community there, it's not that large. Maybe mainly because add-on scenery and add-on products in general are very expensive. So I've been a aviation fan forever since I was born, basically, and I don't know. I got into flight simulation when I was 12, I think. And well, yeah, I mean, my first simulator was X.7. Back then, the add-on community for X-Plane wasn't as big as it is today. For example, X.7, I remember it only had a couple like add-on planes. There were no add-on scenery. There was no way of getting the add-on sceneries onto X-Plane. And these airplanes were like also pretty terrible. Like it was barely flyable. So I got bored of X-Plane very quickly and got FSX. And when I got FSX, I was like so amazed with all of the different sceneries and planes and utilities, like all the different things you can get for FSX back then. And because of, well, again, I'm from Latin America, so getting, for example, the PMGG 737 for me was like pretty much impossible.
It still is for a lot of people because they charge a fortune for it.
yeah, it's definitely on like the more expensive side of add-on products, and usually that's the case with those detail aircraft, and those are the ones you want to fly, right? You don't want to fly those I don't know, cheap or freeways.
Yeah, once you go good fidelity airplane, it's hard to go back to something that halfway functions properly.
Exactly.
I think that people I think that's why the term is in the flight sim community, I gotta prepare my wallet, is just so common because people are like, oh shoot, there's another one.
Yeah. And for example, for me, one plane that I really wanted to have is the MD-80. Back then, there was a couple of options. And MD-80s are super popular in Latin America, still flying today. And for me, that was the plane that I wanted. And just getting the MD-80 was like prohibitively expensive for me. So one day I was like, you know what? If people are doing this, I can do this as well. So I don't know. I just started playing with the SDK, playing with the different tools, and I got something, a very terrible product, and I released that on Sim Market. And from there, I made, I don't know, like $50, which, I mean, it's money that I just made by playing with the SDK basically, and learning, because I didn't know how to do anything. And from there, I just started building more and doing more things and more complex things and learning more. And that's how everything started. So then I immigrated to Canada, and that's where things got serious with this, because I think the first product that he made, like first Canadian product, was Toronto, like the Toronto City Airport. And that one was a great success. And the Canadian community is actually it's a great community. People are very invested into like flight sim, and they are very supportive, because like Canada has been always one of those places that no developer has really put that many attention in, because there's probably like more profitable markets like Europe and the US. So larger, yeah, like the large developers are focused on those markets more than the Canadian market. And I didn't really know that, but I just, I was moving to Canada, so why not? And when I started developing Canadian products and started seeing how the community reacted, that was the thing that made me actually, decide to keep going for Canadian airports. And then Calgary came, and then after Calgary, I had a bit of a break from Canada. I went back to like Latin America, did Cancun, did Panama City, and then back to Canada with Edmonton, Kelowna, and now Vancouver. And the plan for 2021, we pretty much only have Canadian airports for this year. There's a few products that we're like discussing, Frederick and I, that are not located in Canada, but mainly our focus for this year is Canada.
I mean, it's funny if I might jump in here and say that other than Toronto, I would never fly anywhere else in Canada if it wasn't for you guys and Patrick. Seriously. Because, as you said, everybody's like the US, New York, LA, London, Paris, whatever. Canada's like, okay, it's more, I'm in the US, it's north of the border. But yeah, I've been to Toronto and that's all I knew. But when you guys come out with these sceneries, like, whoa, I can do long haul from one side of Canada to the next. It's beautiful. So I appreciate you guys concentrating on that part of North America, and let everybody else, step all over each other for the rest of it. It's good. It's good for the flight sim community. It's opened up my whole flying area now even more. There's places I still haven't done yet, and then the Canadian Rockies. I can keep going, but thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, as I said, Oh, sorry. Yeah, Patrick.
I was gonna add in with like only 10 major Canadian cities. It won't be long before we have most, if not all, Canadian airports done.
But it's crazy though, because there are so many places around Canada has never been touched. I have a couple destinations in my mind that have never been touched by any developers. And I think it's interesting because there's all these major airports. This Patrick said there's a handful of them, but then there's all these remote airports that are, we don't think as Yellowknife as being the most popular airport in the world, but for some people, for a lot of people, those airports are the ones that are lacking in our simulators.
Yeah, for example, Yellowknife, they have direct flights from Frankfurt, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a very popular destination for Germans, and the German community is huge, so that, for example, could be an interesting location.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also with Norm. I mean, I wanted to fly to Montreal because I have a very personal connection to Montreal because I've been there a few times for music trips, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Montreal, but there's the huge basilica there, and I performed there a few times, so I always love to go to Montreal and go into Old Montreal and hang out there. So that was the first airport that I immediately wanted to go to, and when I realized there was no scenery for it, I was really disappointed. And hearing Patrick was working on Vancouver, which is the other scenery that I wanted as well, was so awesome, because when Patrick finally released Vancouver and I flew there and I was able to land and have such a beautiful airport, it was so important, and it meant so much that you guys are working on this market that so many people just don't really touch. And it's I think with Microsoft Flight Simulator more than ever, people are just exploring new places, and what better way than to develop for it and to show people that there's some beautiful places to go in Canada, and you just have to have the inclination to look for them.
Yeah, tons. Like, if you want a regional flight, I think Canada has. There's only a few major cities, but for regional airports, there's thousands. And there's so many of that I want to do that have, really neat approaches, super unique approaches that, are really challenging. Some of them are really easy, but, beautiful places of the country. And there's thousands of them. So yeah, there's so many destinations that we can do, and it's pretty exciting.
Now that, for example, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, we don't really have airliners that are like worth like flying, to be honest. Yeah. So it's more inclined to general aviation, for now, I guess. And that makes, for example, those like airports that are in remote locations or have interesting approaches or like have something different but are not in a major city. Those are more like interesting than ever.
Yeah. What was Patrick, what was that one airport that we were talking about I think it was about last week, that you said is like the Innsbruck of Canada?
Oh, Castlegar in British Columbia. Just probably
Yeah.
an hour flight west of or east of Vancouver.
I think we were saying that in a lot of ways that airport would be like perfect for Microsoft Flight Simulator because of the fact that it's has this challenging approach to it
Yeah.
and I mean, you described it as just a really fun airport to fly to as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that may or may not be a current project.
Ooh.
Is that a GA or airliner?
Mix of both. I know Canadian North comes in there with a 737-200 for charters. They also have the 300 coming in there. Dash 8 is regular service from Calgary and Vancouver. It is mostly kind of smaller turboprop, but bringing like a 737 into that airport is a handful. It is super challenging, but it is so rewarding when you get down because you got that short runway on either side. You know, you got a mountain on either side, you got a cliff on the other end. It's awesome, man. You got to try it.
Now, as a simmer, I would much rather prefer a challenging approach than a straight in ILS from 16 miles out. You know, there's no fun in that anymore.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would prefer that if I could.
I actually would debate this and saying that 60 miles approach into Vancouver, if you're going 26 right, is beautiful with the Rockies on the right side, with the city downtown on the right side as well. Beautiful approach.
I always seem to get the other end of that approach coming over the water, coming into Vancouver. I guess it's the winds or something, but I'm gonna try that with the Rockies on the right side. I like that. Both in Microsoft and in X-Plane, because I have the latest Vancouver from Canada for X-Plane. It's beautiful. So, yeah. But definitely, I mean, I like the fact that you guys, again, are uncovering this part of the world that is busy in real life, but nobody does it in the sim. You know what I mean? So that's a good deal. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of special operations on the north. So like cargos and like there's like smaller airports where, for example, DC-3s operate. And if in the future, if we have like a good DC-3 to like fly around on MSFS, it would be great to fly to these other like smaller airports in the north as well. There's a lot of like interesting locations that could be you know, developed in Canada in detail.
Yeah,
Like for example, we have yeah, Frederick, sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I was if ever there'd be a Dash 8 or even a King Air developed for MSFS. My day job is teaching. I'm a teacher, but before I got to where I am today, I used to teach on Cree community in northern Quebec. And there's all these small airports that are 50 minutes flight from one another, and there's the milk run that starts from Montreal, goes to Val d'Or, and then they go to all the different communities. So there's Waskaganish, there's East Main, there's Chisasibi, and all the way up to James Bay. And those are beautiful places to fly. For the most part, they're gravel runways. And those are places that I feel would be awesome for simmers and MSFS especially to explore.
What is like, I know I've talked to Patrick about this, but I am really just getting to know you and Frederick and Gabriel. What is like your airport that you've done that you love and that is so personal to you and that you're so happy that you did and it looks great?
Okay, I'll start. For me, I mean, there's two airports. The first one would be Vancouver, just because I'm so proud of the result. It's been the largest project that Freddie and I have done so far, and also like performance so far in terms of comments and the community reaction and everything to the airport has been amazing. That would be the first one. The second one would be Calgary. So Calgary is, I consider currently my home city. And that was the first large project that I took when I got to Canada. Like after Toronto City Airport, Calgary was the second one. So for me, that was like a whole new chapter. And after Calgary was released again, like the community just went crazy because there wasn't a good Calgary scenery for P3D or FSX back then.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I think for me, I don't know. I feel like Kelowna is my most proud product, just because it's the first one officially I joined the team with Gabriel, and we released that one together. It was the first real project that I was working on for the Flight Sim community. Really proud, and I didn't know when I got into the project, I didn't know how particular this airport was in the mountains and some of the RNAV approaches as well. So I had a lot of fun while developing the scenery, just trying to shoot approaches and see what the airport was all about. Um, and I've never really heard about Kelowna prior either. So that was a nice surprise. And then obviously Vancouver was just, as Gabriel said, it's a huge, huge, huge endeavor. So something to be proud of. A lot of work that went into it. Um, and it's definitely, I think, as Patrick you said earlier, not Patrick, but Sol you said earlier, flying from Montreal or Toronto all the way to Vancouver, that long haul in Canada is awesome. So it's one of my favorite flights to do.
Yeah, he flies like twice a week that route.
It's more interesting than flying cross country in the USA. It's just flat here. There's nothing to look at, But flying it from Canada, there's way more features in the land itself, and it's just beautiful. So having sceneries on both end to take off and land in is the key for me. So having developers work on those airports, it's nice to take off at a nicely done airport and land at a nicely done airport. It's almost something underwhelming to land in a default airport. It just doesn't seem right. I don't know what you guys think. So, I love having airports on both ends of my trips and destinations and journeys.
Yeah, 2 good airports, both ends, cup of coffee, full VATSIM coverage. That's the perfect flight right there.
There was full Canada coverage last weekend, actually, because I was doing, a friend and I decided to do an impromptu flight around the world. So we unfortunately ended up leaving from Newark, which meant that we had to end at Newark, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with Newark, but it's not great. And we were crossing the pond. No, sorry, we were leaving. I was leaving Heathrow. He was leaving Gatwick, and we were going down to Lagos in Africa, and we saw that Canada had full coverage, and we were both like, "Oh, goddamn! Why are we doing this right now when we could be having full Canada coverage, which is so rare these days?" But luckily, as soon as we noticed it, it was only full for like 30 minutes, and then one of them dropped off. But full ATC coverage on VATSIM is something really special, and I'm waiting for the day that I'm able to fly from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa and never, ever go to Unicom.
I don't know if you've checked it out, but a lot of the Canadian FIRs, they have this huge culture around them. Like they have a big group, of following group, and they always hold events with each other, and they always, I don't know if this is the same in VATSIM USA, but in Canada, they're always holding events with each other. And like Vancouver will talk to Toronto, and they'll get all the centers online from the east to the west, right? There's only like 4 or 5, so it's not that hard, considering.
And, yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you get that top-down ETC, and it makes that scenery even better. And yeah, wonderful experience.
It's funny because it used to be the joke that Toronto would always be offline way back when, 5-10 years ago, and now it's Toronto's always online, Montreal's never online. So it always used to be that kind of like battle in between the two FIRs. It's a great place to fly, honestly. You always can count on Winnipeg being online. Vancouver is kind of getting more and more active too with the scenery. I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually noticed scenery taking it up.
Yeah, just after we released the scenery, I think it was online for a few days, right, Frederick? You were flying a lot those days.
There's always the joke in the US that Boston is always online, but New York Center is just like never online unless most of the East Coast is online. It's kind of like all right, you guys are online, I guess I should join too.
It's true. But hey, it's benefits of the times that we're living in, being at home a lot. So I appreciate all the coverages. Are you guys getting more time, by the way, to develop scenery now based on what's going on in the world, with the sickness and stuff? Or is it the same?
Yeah, a fair bit more time.
Okay,
yeah. I as I said earlier, I teach, so now everything is online. So my whole days are teaching these days and planning. So I don't get much time to do the scenery. It's more of a weekend thing or an evening thing. But for sure, I remember when everything shut down here in Canada last year. That's really when we had a lot of time on our hands to work on that. So that was really, really awesome.
Yeah. I had like a couple of months off just developing, and that actually helped a lot with Vancouver. Nowadays, I have a day job as well. I'm an engineer, so I'm working from home currently, and that like allows me to have a couple more hours to work on developing every day. But as well, like same with Patrick. I'm sorry, Frederick. For me, it's mostly a weekend thing. But yeah, like my evenings are also invested in developing.
So, Frederick, you said you're a teacher. How has that been during the pandemic? Because I'm personally a student myself, and I've noticed that um, I've talked to a few teachers, and they've talked about how it's pretty hard for them to adjust to this new teaching style.
I actually enjoy it a lot. Just the fact that I don't have to wake up that early in the morning. I just wake up, take my coffee, breakfast, and I'm online. And then our days are finishing at 12:30. And then there's lunch, and then there's the study hall, but no kids ever show up to that. So basically, my day's over at 12:30. I like except like I know a lot of teachers are just kind of like bummed out because it's teaching 4 classes or 4 hours in a single day, so it's a lot of prep. For me, I enjoy it. The only thing I'm missing is that personal connection with the kids where, sometimes you're teaching and no one has their webcam on, so you're sort of teaching to the wall. But other than that,
Mhm.
I really enjoy it. I think it's nice. Um, it's different. I don't know if next year I'll still be very eager to go teach online, or be back in the classroom, but for me, it was a positive experience throughout.
That's great. Yeah. Norm works in how would you describe your job?
I'm in the
You
technology
work in
field,
internet.
right? So I deal a lot with internet connections and so forth, and I've actually been working double since this thing starts because everybody's home, everybody's online, everybody wants a faster connection. You're finally realizing that 5 people at home online doing web meetings and schooling, you need a faster connection. So, sorry. So the company that I work for, we've just been swamped with work, upgrading and fixing and making sure that nobody loses their service in the daytime. And you wouldn't believe, man, getting mobbed going down the streets. And I'm like, hey, my internet's out.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I honestly, I've been lucky for that, but I have some of my students who can't be online for some periods of time just because someone else needs the Chromebook or someone else needs a computer or there's too many people in the connection. But with the whole like Google Suite, that's what we're using, Google Classroom. It's just been a blessing. The technology's there. Pretty much everything works very well as it should. Um, yeah. So, but I can see how a lot of students are saying how the internet is being an issue these days.
We've found seeing weak spots up the internet. However, it's good for streaming because my streams have never been better as far as just being uploading and streaming 1080p because I have a great connection at home. I made sure of that. you know, true, true, true. Yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but as far as the development side of developing sceneries, I mean, I know you try to keep your sceneries at where the frames are good for all the simulators, but yeah. Does the internet connection affect that for you guys, or are you putting more things and more objects in the sceneries, or which require more download space? I don't know. How does it work for you guys?
Yeah, so for P3D and especially now for MSFS, one of the biggest issues would be the satellite images take a lot of space. MSFS, I don't know why, but if you put like custom satellite images, they take a lot more than P3D like ortho images. So the problem that we're facing right now, we're trying to develop a new like tool for downloads. We are gonna announce this like very soon, but we're developing something. And one of the issues that I'm having right now is that in terms of server cost, it just like it's very expensive. So it's something we're trying to balance, and now with Vancouver for MSFS, we had to actually cut the area that we cover with custom satellite images just because it would be, I don't know, like a 10 gigabyte download. Yeah.
Has covering areas with your own custom satellite images in Microsoft Flight Simulator, has it gotten easier because I remember speaking to developers a few months ago, and they said that at least with the current SDK, it was rather difficult to put your own images in without just going through a bunch of loopholes to avoid Bing's imagery.
Yeah, so I would say that P3D is still easier. Like the solution that P3D has, it's way better. But like the MSFS solution is not that. The only problem that I'm having is file size. Like it gets very, very large very, very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been my issue with ortho, and why I've always tried to work on them myself before actually permanently putting them in my hard drive, because I still primarily fly X-plane, and I've been trying to just get ortho for most of the US because I have the space to do it, so I figured why not. But I know that if you're not careful with it, sometimes ortho can really be overwhelming. So I can't even imagine what it's like from a developer's perspective.
Yeah, that's one of the large issues that we currently have. But I mean, having the default satellite images is always a benefit in the case of MSFS. In many airports, many cities, it's great and more than enough. Some other places, for example, Vancouver, it's outdated. It's not the greatest quality. That's why we decided to go for the custom images.
Oh, okay. So, Gabriel, you mentioned that you are in your day job, you're an engineer.
Yeah.
Have you found that the so I need a little bit of background before I ask this question so you understand why I'm asking it. So I was going to major in aerospace engineering, but I decided against it because I realized that there were some aspects of aerospace engineering that I needed to learn, such as calculus, that I really wasn't a huge fan of.
Oh, come on, it's not that bad.
It was just so, I just found it really boring. It wasn't hard to do, but I was just it seemed pointless. I don't know, I didn't really enjoy calculus. So I took a complete 180 and I am studying psychology now.
Okay. That's very, very different.
But I know that but I know that as an engineer you're very often taught to learn how to problem solve.
Yes.
And that was something that I got really, really early, especially in math, is that you just wouldn't be told how to solve some things, and you would need to figure it out. And that was part of the curriculum, which I thought was really great because it also helped me in my other classes as well, being able to find issues with like papers that I was writing or something along those lines, and be able to solve those issues. So have you found that your engineering background has helped you in ways to solve issues that you might have come up while developing for P3D or Microsoft Flight Simulator? Or is it just so different that you haven't seen any result of your field?
Yeah, so just to give a bit of background as well, my major is mechanical engineering. Even though I'm not working in mechanical, I'm working in software. Always been more like software inclined, but at the end I decided to go for mechanical because of the same idea you had with aerospace engineering, I guess. Like third year university, I realized mechanical is very, very different to what I thought it was. And yeah, like there's a lot of things that I find boring about it, but that's not the point. The thing is, I work in software, and working in software, and also like the flight simulation software being software. There's a lot of things that I apply from like my software skills and my programming and problem solving skills onto flight simulation. And for example, one of the things that we did for Edmonton and later Kelowna and Vancouver is that P3D lets you switch seasons and do weather dependent changes based on code, based on scripting.
Right. So it's like if else statements pretty much.
Basically, yeah. So you take a variable from the sim, which is, for example, weather or wind or any of that. And then with an if else, if for example, if weather equals rain, well, just do this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is completely independent from SOD. So one of the things that SOD, like the jetway engine that P3D has, one of the problems there is that you can crash the sim very easily. Especially now with V5, it's creating a lot of issues. So having those changes completely independent from SOD is a great solution. And so far, that's the solution we implement on every single product. And also another thing, well, as I already mentioned, we're working on a new like tool for downloads and updates and all of that, just to streamline everything and like avoid people having to reinstall the product every time we fix something or every time we update the product.
Right. Okay. That's really cool.
Here's a question I've heard Sol ask many times of many developers. What's the learning curve like now with Microsoft? I'm assuming you guys will talk about some of what you guys are going to be doing coming up soon, but what's the learning curve like with Microsoft developing for it?
It's easier. I would say it's easier, but that being said, yeah. That being said, there's for me it has been easier. There's a few things where you can take shortcuts compared to P3D. But that being said, there's also a lot of things that are missing.
Yeah, I think it's easier throughout. I think the process is streamlined. I think the SDK is the biggest thing that's being faulty and causing us issues for the most part at the moment. It is incredible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the SDK also does offer some options that were making us take so many steps in the past that we don't have to take anymore. I think the other thing that's awesome as well for some developers as well who were not playing with ambient occlusion or not putting ambient occlusion on their models is that Flight Sim 2020 does that automatically. So if you were a scenery maker in the past, you were not putting any ambient occlusion on your model, your scenery was not the greatest, but now Flight Sim 2020 makes it look awesome. So that's a big change as well. It makes it a little bit easier for people who want to start making sceneries, I suppose.
Yeah, but touching again on the point with like about the SDK, definitely there's a lot of things that are missing. There's like few things that we like no one really knows how to do. For example, I was just working on something for the past like 4 or 5 days, and I got like the latest update yesterday, and it doesn't work anymore.
Oh no.
So I have no idea what to do now. Just wait for the next update, and like that's gonna delay the product that we're about to release, which is Vancouver for MSFS. So yeah, like I have no idea what to do now.
Jeez. So that's the frustrating part and growing pains, I guess, with a brand new simulator and also trying to be, getting your products over to it. I mean, do you sit back and just say, you know what, I'm done, I'm gonna wait for a year, or do you keep trying and getting frustrated from time to time?
Yeah. But I mean, I get it. It's a brand new platform. I think like people are moving very, very fast to the new platform. And well, I mean, the market has to adapt as well. So we are trying to do as much as possible with what we have. And I know some people are unhappy with that. Some other people are okay with that. But yeah, we definitely have some limitations. Some things are easier. Some other things are hard.
Yeah, I mean that's something I've always tried to pay attention to when I've been reviewing products too, and why I've been trying to educate myself on some things. I think it was Patrick we were speaking a few weeks ago, and I think you asked me, do you review products for Microsoft Flight Simulator differently than you review products for X-Plane? And my answer was that yes, I do, because there's so many things that you guys are still not quite able to do, or that you have to kind of cheat on in order to get into the simulator, because the simulator is developing and the SDK is by no means in its final form, and is constantly evolving. And that's something that is, I think some people forget, that I wanted to make sure I didn't forget when I was looking at sceneries too, is that you guys are learning just as much as Asobo is learning about this process, and that sceneries won't be perfect and exactly how you want them to be until all the tools are available to you for you to make it perfect and beautiful and everything that you want the scenery to be.
Yeah, comparing it to Xplain's SDK, it is. I don't know what those guys are doing to make it so nice, but being from Xplain and going to Microsoft SDK, it's been tough. Like just kind of the workflows are quite a bit different for me, and the just the way you have to process the scenery and kind of you have to. I think you have to think ahead far more doing it in Microsoft Flight Sim than you would say Xplain. I don't know if that goes over to P3D, but
yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, it's just I think there's a lot more planning you got to do, and kind of there's a greater loss if you don't do something correctly, and it's a little bit harder to fix. Because Xplain's super easy. Everything is in text. Everything you can edit with a text editor, right? You could rewrite the entire simulator with just a text editor, right? It's amazing. It's great. And Microsoft Flight Sim, a lot more things are compiled like that, or not like that, and everything's a little bit harder. So you really have to think ahead that got to make sure that this part is perfect before we bring it in, or this part, this model is almost dead perfect before we bring it in, because modifying it after, I found it to be a way bigger struggle than say Xplane, where you just edit a couple of values and you change your entire model. That's where I come from it. So it'll be a good learning curve in the future here when we get some more products out.
Yeah, I would say both P3D and Xplane are very modular. So each building or each texture, everything is a separate entity. Here in MSFS, you have to compile everything to just one package. And then making changes over that package is very, very complicated. You basically have to recompile it. And that's a waste of time, honestly.
Oh, that makes sense now. Okay. I was wondering why people were commenting on how tedious it can be sometimes. And I didn't know that everything had to be in an entire package. That's really annoying. My God.
Yeah. I think the only thing you can just deactivate easily is textures. You can just remove it from a text file. But models or anything else, it has to be compiled.
Wow, okay. So that makes a lot of sense as to why Xplain developers are having a tricky time going there, because they're used to being able to click everything individually and move everything around like that. I don't know anything about P3D personally, so if it's the same case for
Yeah,
P3D,
it's
then
very
that would
similar.
make sense. Yeah, so then that makes sense as to why it's such a different system for people, because I was trying to figure out exactly obviously this isn't the only thing, but I've been trying to figure out what are some minute things that separate Microsoft Flight Simulator from P3D and Xplane that make it different for developers to use it. But that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if you remember, Soul, but when I was working on the interiors for Vancouver, that one stream, and you kept on catching out those texture problems and kind of the model issues, that would have taken probably twice as long or 3 times as long in Microsoft Flight Sim than it did just from Xplane, because in Xplane I had all that, the text editors right in front of me, right? I could just change values on the fly. But
Right.
yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to do that for MSFS.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that for MSFS. Similar issue. There's a few texture issues, and just because of that, again, no idea how to fix it. There's not that much information about the specific issue that I'm having. So I'm just trying different things, and every time I try something else, I have to compile and open Sim again and check if it worked and go back. So it's a longer
To
process.
help me visualize this, it's kind of like Patrick, maybe you'll be able to help me with this. It's as if with your process that we were speaking about earlier, when I noticed those issues, you went through and you just edited a few things either in the textures or the text files or something along those lines, and then you just then you would see the changes in the simulator near instantly. But if you were to do the same thing in Microsoft Flight Simulator, if I were to make those comments, you need to make make those changes and then recompile everything, and then you would finally get the changes that you put. Is that kind of what you guys are saying?
Yeah, because in Xplane you can just click reload scenery right in the little dev corner, so that
Yeah.
literally instantly reloads everything you just did. in Microsoft Flight Sim, I'm under the understanding that you have to close the simulator, do your fixes, recompile it, open it back up again, get back into dev mode, and then get into the scenery project.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So from a layman, how long does the recompiling take?
That really depends. So for example, if you're just compiling the airport, it might take 5 minutes. But if you're compiling the airport and the orthophotos, it can take like hours.
What?
Like for Vancouver, if I compile everything together, it probably takes an hour and a half.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I just work with the airport and then just work with the orthophotos and then compile everything together. Like I work the two things separately just because compiling everything together, it's just a waste of time.
And then you compile everything and realizing that you forgot one thing, and you're like, oh.
Exactly. So that happened to me a lot.
Jeez, my mouth is wide open right now going, how do you guys have the patience? Because I'm the guy who just get to criticize and go, look at this, they didn't do the scenery right, or they didn't do this cart right, or something is wrong. Not realizing how much work goes into what you guys do and how frustrating it is at this point. Maybe it's going to get better, And so for you guys out there listening, this is what goes into what making a scenery. It's not easy. So, step back a little bit before you make a comment or in chat or in a forum about what scenery looks like or don't look like, you know what I mean?
And to add to your point, actually, it reminds me of a couple of years ago. I remember when Fly Tempo released Montreal for P3D. They released the update, and a lot of us were complaining on their forum because they mismodel a part of the terminal, which was essential, and we couldn't believe they hadn't seen that before. And it took them maybe a month, 2 months to release that further update. And now being in the field, I can see why we're pushing stuff to an update that's going to come in the future. So, for example, the new apron in Vancouver was part of an update, and same thing for the downtown was part of an update, because if you want to include everything, you'll never be done, right? So you got to break it down in pieces, and that way it makes work more manageable.
Yeah, and that update that we released for Vancouver, the very first one, it was a headache for Frederick and I. We didn't sleep for a month.
Oh no. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
Hearing
fine.
about that whole compiling thing is just that would really push my patience, because the sim takes forever to start. I don't know about I don't know if you guys have super machines or something that can get Microsoft Flight Simulator to start really quickly, but for me it takes at least 5 minutes, and then another 2 to 3 to load up in the sim. So you're talking about 20-ish minutes to see a change that you made, depending on how long it took for you to either compile it or to make the change in the first place. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And half the time, the change that you made doesn't work. So,
Yeah,
gotta keep on
That's
doing
even
it.
worse.
That's so true. I remember just the downtown part for Vancouver. We needed to fix some of the textures that were there were issues with flickering. And the number of times that you had to go out of the sim, fix it, go in the sim, fix it, go out of the sim, fix it until everything was fixed with all the buildings downtown. Yeah, it can be very lengthy.
My God. Okay, respect to you guys. I will never give bad reviews ever again.
No, I think you should. I think you should. I think you should. I think they are bad apples. I think that they are bad apples, and they are senior developers who are learning. And without those comments, it's easy to just sit back and not move forward. I think I can speak for both Gabriel and us. In the last 2 releases, our products became much, much, much better. And even before I joined the team, there's a curve, and you can see the progression as well. So it's normal for it's great to get that feedback, so that next time we're working on our next project, if there's something that the community doesn't like, then we can fix it or we can go around it, right?
Yeah, and touching on that point, after we released the update for Vancouver on P3D, Frederick and I had a conversation about what to improve in the future. So we already have a plan on things that we need to improve and methods that we need to refine based on what the community said basically, and also to avoid the issues we'd had with the update. So as I said, it was a nightmare. It was a headache just because we didn't plan ahead.
So would you say you're kind of alluding to the fact that the community actually helps you a lot more than you might let on to
Yeah,
improve
I
your
mean,
100%.
products.
negative comments sometimes are very constructive, and sometimes are a great source of, feedback for us to improve in the future.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I personally, I often enjoy the people who leave really specific constructive criticism on videos, because we recently tried to do like reschedule reviews, not reschedule, reformat, that's the word. And part of it included having a face cam so that you kind of had like a break every once in a while from watching the scenery. And I asked people what they thought about it, and lots of people left really specific comments about how they didn't like it, but I could try like this thing instead, and try maybe if I needed to have the face cam, like putting it in this direction or something along those lines. And it really helps you grow a lot. People don't realize that their feedback can actually mean a lot. However, I will say really negative comments do not help.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
depends if it's
constructive
constructive or
criticism.
not.
Exactly.
I mean, so as developers, I mean, sorry, Phil, but have you grown a thick skin as far as, listen to some of the really, really negative comments and being able to just let it roll off your back and not take it personally?
I'll take this one first, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, no worries.
So one of the, I'm just gonna go back to the first negative comment I ever got. It was like 3 years ago, and it honestly it touched pretty hard. Like it hurt. But I mean, after that, you kind of you take it and you bring parts that are kind of legitimate about it and how you can learn off of it, and then the rest of it that's like a personal attack on yourself, you can just throw that away and kind of learn to ignore that. Because there are some out there where people will comment on a scenery and then personally attack the developer, and it's the very rare occasion that happens. You kind of just throw the personal attack out, but then you can definitely learn even from the most negative comments that, hey, maybe I'll go look here, fix something up, change it a little bit, because obviously someone had a thought about it, and it's not right. So I'll go back and look at it again and make sure it's right. But I think after a while, you get used to kind of throwing away the personal attack, but definitely taking in the actual material that they're kind of explaining to you, the actual part of the scenery that they don't like. And so yeah, I would say that you would kind of grow a thick skin to it.
Yeah, I agree with Patrick. It would be the same for me. The first few comments you get are always more, personal, because, well, first of all, if you're doing this by yourself, this is your fault. You could be doing better, I guess. But then you realize, haters gonna hate. There's always gonna be people criticizing, and there's also a lot of people that love your work and like what you do, and then they give you constructive feedback, and that's what I take. Basically, I take the constructive feedback, and we apply. Frederick and I, as I said, we have been taking constructive feedback from Vancouver to apply that to future projects.
I think, I think the first comments always hurt the most because for the month prior, you haven't slept. So you're releasing the product, and then the couple of days after, you're just troubleshooting some stuff. And so the first comments come in, and you're just edgy. No, I'm kidding. But I think those comments, as I said, I think as I said earlier, those comments, they help us move the community further and further and further. And I think competition drive innovation, and I think that those comments
Definitely, yeah.
is always something to look into. Applying, whether they're super negative. There's probably other people thinking that way, so we have to act on them. They're the customers, right? So they're the people we want to please. At the end of the day.
So I have a funny story. I mean, I'm a streamer, so I really do go through and read all the comments on the videos after they've been posted and all that stuff. And I never forgot this one. I usually say welcome aboard to anybody new who comes into the comment section while I'm live streaming. It's something that I do. I glance over, see who's there, say hello to them, and I use the phrase welcome aboard. So one comment, the guy was like, can you shut up and stop saying welcome aboard to every single person that comes in? He goes, geez, we know it's airplane. We know they're already aboard. Just stop saying it. And I remember reading that going, oh my God, this is harsh, but I did catch myself in the next stream going, I really probably do say welcome board a little too much. Let me change it up and say it, just say hello, and I did change, but, I guess it's kind of like that, where it sucks what they're saying to you or how they're saying it, but at least if you reflect back just a little bit to see if they have a valid point or not.
Exactly. The most powerful thing you can do is be part of that community, right? Like I think a developer that isn't part of the community, they're missing out on so much, right? The general crowd has so much information that you can gather from them and how they feel about something. You have to be in the community if you want to be, you know, I guess I would say successful in it, and have kind of a good following. It's a must, right? You have to be active in the community. You got to take in what other people think, or else you as a developer, you're not going to grow, right? If you're not taking in any of the community feedback, and you're going to end up not pleasing the customer in the end, right? So I think the best thing we can all do is really look at those comments, even the bad comments, and go, okay, I'll look at that. I'll see what I can do off of that, even though it's like the nastiest comment I've ever seen in my life. I'll still work off of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
The flight sim community can be very critical sometimes, I would say. But again, most of those comments are positive at the end, like are constructive. And for me, for example, I take very seriously the customer perspective on things. I consider myself a customer centric person. So I'm always listening to community and also trying to please the people. So one of the things that we had with Vancouver very early on is that Vancouver doesn't really get that much snow. Winters in Vancouver are very light. And for me, developing Canadian sceneries, having winter textures are a must, basically. And one of the very first things that the community said, especially like early November and December, was like, hey, why am I getting snow in Vancouver if we don't ever get snow here? And that's something I didn't think about. I was like, okay, yeah, Vancouver gets snow like twice a year, so might as well have it. And then the community said, no, like, this is not how Vancouver works. So I made it optional. And that's something I completely missed. And that's something Frederick completely missed. And then listening to the community, we realized, okay, this is probably not the best approach. We could do something different. We could do something better here.
It's almost as if they kept you in check.
Yeah, basically.
True. So, moving forward a little bit now, FSimStudios. What can you talk about that's coming on the turnpike? What can't you talk about, or what can we expect, the community expect from you guys now, since you guys have this nice conglomerate together for Canada, for the north part of the continent here? What's going to go on with you guys? What do you guys have coming that you're excited about?
I also do want to add as well to that. Not only what do you guys have coming, but what's next for your partnership with Patrick?
Yeah, so I'll give this one to Frederick. If you wanna say something.
Sure. Well, we've got a couple of things coming up. As far as Canadian sceneries, so we're currently working hard on, I suppose, releasing Vancouver for MSFS. We also have in the works Halifax, so we're almost done the project for P3D. So as soon as we got Vancouver out of the works, then Halifax will go full steam on. I'll take a little bit more time to go with teaching and doing Halifax at the same time, so we can get it out as early as possible. But most of the work has been done over the holidays in part to that. Afterwards, we've got a special project that's coming in. That's going to be very, very exciting over Flight Sim 2020. We've got London. So London is my home airport at the moment. That's where I live. So London, Ontario is west of Toronto, east of Windsor/Detroit. So that was my first 3D project. So the one that I actually practiced 3D modeling. So everything is pretty much done for that one as well. It's just there in the queue. Am I missing anything, Gabriel?
Calgary. So
Oh,
yeah,
Calgary.
Calgary
Yeah.
version 2 is coming.
Yeah.
That one's gonna be a big one. Probably Q2, 3 from this year. We expect to release it. Yeah, that's basically it. So as I said, we're working on a few other things on the side as well, just to have a very better customer experience throughout. But yeah, those are basically the plans. There's a few other things in there, but yeah, those are the plans.
Yeah, we always have so well, obviously Calgary is the latest one that we'll or the one that's gonna come Q3. Potentially. So we were always discussing about, what are we going to do next? Because we're just daydreaming, taking a break from our jobs, and thinking, oh yeah, that'd be cool to do this. But yeah, I've always been very, very supportive of doing Canadian airports, just because I've seen the lack of Canadian airports wanting to fly Air Canada or wanting to fly WestJet, right? So that London airport was part of that. Being able to do some dash aid into London, and then eventually I wanted to do originally before I joined the team Windsor and this and this and that. So it's always a focus for us to be able to do that. But we also want to look at other options as well.
And what about your future with Patrick? How is that looking?
Oh, we're still collaborating. So Patrick's gonna be fully involved with Calgary, with London. Halifax, we actually have a collaboration with another X-Plane developer.
Awesome.
And yeah, in the future, like Patrick, I think he's working on a few projects, and we are interested as well on bringing those to P3D and potentially working together on MSFS.
I need to say it's been awesome. I don't know Patrick personally, but it's been awesome to be able to work with Canada for Explain, just because we are able to offer customers as much choice as possible when it comes to airport, and we know how few developers are working on Canadian airports. So to be able to collaborate on that and get the ball rolling and get as many out as possible has been a very, very positive experience.
How did the link with Patrick come about? Maybe I missed it, but how did that come about?
I think I briefly touched it. Gabriel, do you want me to take it, or?
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't remember actually.
Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, on that, so it was almost a year. I think it's almost a year now. Coming up on our year anniversary here.
Oh, that's sweet. No.
Yeah.
Continue.
Except that Gabriel has short-term memory. Doesn't
remember. That's too many things on my mind. Sorry.
Yeah, I forgot our 1 year. That kind of hurts me. But anyway, all jokes. So I finished up Hamilton, and I was looking to do Kelowna. I love flying in and out of Kelowna because I think, like Frederick said, the RNAVs and the approaches in there are super fun in the 737. So I was looking at it, and then I've always seen FSimStudios scenery for P3D, and I was like, this is good quality stuff, and it's for Canada, so awesome. And I was like, well, maybe I'll send them an email. Like to me, these guys were like big developers, like they were like the big guys. And being Canada for X-Men, I'm kind of like the little guy. This is gonna be a long shot if I actually get this. But I emailed Gabriel, and I was like, hey, what do you think about bringing some of your products to X-Plane? And he was on board, and I was like, yes, I scored it, great. Now I need to really do the best job I can ever do to make sure that I can keep this. So I worked on Kelowna for a little bit. It was the first time converting and using these models, so it was a little bit of a different workflow. But in the end, I've finally gotten that workflow done using the materials that they're giving me now, and I think the product for X-Plane is really great. Like I fly into that scenery all the time, and I found myself kind of more critical of the work that I'm doing, and I'm still really happy with Kelowna. I'm actually just working on an update for it now to incorporate automatic seasonal change using the SAM Seasons plugin. I actually just finished that for Vancouver City last night and Quebec City. Just finished those two last night, and soon to be Kelowna. Anyways, I worked on Kelowna, got that finished, gave it to Gabriel. He liked it. So I was like, great, awesome, I got it. He gave me a couple more projects to do, and then we were talking. And this actually eventually led on to Vancouver. And I was like, hey, I'm working on a Vancouver scenery. And they're like, hey, so are we. And I'm like, well, great. This is awesome. This, you just made my day. So we kind of got that together, and in the end, yeah, it kind of just formed into this where I'm, working with the materials that they're giving me, making them optimized for X-Plane, and the performance that I've seen, and I think a lot of other people have seen, are really awesome with these models. Like, they work amazing in X-Plane. So you guys over there, you're doing a great job. And yeah, it kind of just morphed into what we have now, and I think we have a lot more projects that we're gonna do in the future, and I think it's
Yeah,
looking pretty
definitely.
bright.
For Vancouver was actually interesting because I saw your announcement on FS Elite that you were working on Vancouver. And well, I mean, we already had plans on doing Vancouver. We already started gathering photos and all of this. And when we discussed collaborating on Vancouver, I remember you already had some of the buildings that we were planning to do already done. So it was like really, really beneficial to just collaborate and share what we had with you, and you sharing what you had with us. So yeah, that way, I think the final product for both P3D and Nextplane is amazing. Like as I said a while ago, I'm very proud of that product.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I think having kind of the same, because every developer has their own style, right? And having the same style between, let's say, like when I fly Microsoft Flight Sim and I fly out of Kelowna, and I have the same scenery for Kelowna and X-Plane, I think the immersion there kind of takes it down between now I'm flying two different sims to now I'm just flying out of Kelowna, right? I'm not thinking I'm flying out of X-Plane Kelowna or I'm flying out of Microsoft Flight Sim Kelowna. Now I'm just flying out of Kelowna, which is so awesome because now I can choose what simulator I want for what type of flying I want, right? For Microsoft Flight Sim, probably choose VFR. Now I can fly out of Kelowna, but I'm going to have the same, scenery. So I'm not going to be like, oh, there's a new taxiway here that isn't an X-Plane, or, there isn't a new building in here that isn't an X-Plane. Even everything down to almost the ground traffic placement is pretty much similar. And I think the immersion to me is amazing.
No, I actually love that. Being able to, if you could move from sim to sim and have the similar experience with the scenery. That's that's what we need. With 3 sims out there now, or 4. We need to be able to have everything across the board. That depending on no matter who's flying and what you're flying, we all have the same scenery, all right, with GPS coordinates. Especially sometime you're on VATSIM and somebody's got a different scenery than you. Your airplane is in the grass.
Yeah.
So that is awesome. And I have that Vancouver scenery in X-Plane, and I love it. I mean, they really do everything about it. Just like you saw my stream on it. It was like, wow, this is good. Yeah. So if this is what you guys have coming out, I mean, yeah.
And every scenery, I think Gabriel and Frederick can agree on, every scenery you get so much better. And you look back, even me looking now back at Quebec and Hamilton, I need to update those two. And that was just a year ago, right? Because, my personal skill has grown.
I mean,
considerably grown.
I see Edmonton that was released a year and 2 months ago. And man, that needs an update as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's also being kind of critical on ourselves because, I look at Edmonton, I know, Norm, you commented on the tower on that scenery, that big shiny tower, and how amazing. Like, I don't even know how you guys modeled that. Like, I'm blown away.
It was painful. It was painful.
I tried doing it.
Like, this is real? It's like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, no.
I don't even want to know how many compiles you had to do for that one.
Bringing it into X-Plane, I'm doing some PBR work on it now. I'm having another update rolling it out. I know a fella that is around Edmonton all the time, so he's giving me a very long list of things that are that can be changed. So I have to work on that here soon. But yeah, just the going back to even having the same Edmonton scenery for P3D, Microsoft Flight Sim, X-Plane all at once. You're gonna have better taxiway matching with all the VATSIM traffic, right? And everyone's kind of on the same page. Like, we finally have a real scenery that everyone is commonly using between all platforms.
It's a great thing. That is definitely a great thing.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I'm really happy for you guys, and I've never heard of any partnerships like this happening before. And it's a breath of fresh air that you guys were just so open to it from the get-go too, because it's kind of like 2 great developers collaborating. So instead of them each working on their own scenery, which are fantastic, it's them working on one scenery that is like beyond fantastic, because you guys have so much skill combined, and that's such a cool thing, because I've never seen anything like this before. And honestly, when Patrick told me that you two were collaborating, I was just like, what? That is something I've never heard about. That is super cool. So
Yeah.
it's definitely very welcome, and you guys have done a fantastic job. Vancouver is beautiful, and I'm so excited to see it in Microsoft Flight Simulator as well.
Yeah, and we're super open to collaborate with other developers. As I said, we're working with another Exponent developer for Halifax, and we're talking to like other developers in the P3D MSFS community to collaborate as well. So there's a lot of things coming.
Yep.
Amazing.
Collaborations are hard, but I think when you get, the right people and everyone's on the same page, you can really, step it up a notch and really bring a good product to the customer. It's definitely a plus, because I don't think we would be able to have, a Vancouver scenery for X-Plane the depth that it is now if it wasn't, for the work that Gabriel and Frederick did, just because, they have a bigger platform to work on it versus X-Plane.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what you guys are gonna continue to do, and I'm excited to see everything in both simulators. And hopefully, when Vancouver releases for Microsoft Flight Simulator, I'll be able to have that that 2 sim experience that you were talking about, Patrick. But thank you guys so much for coming on and talking to us just about random stuff such as your degrees, or what it's like to be a teacher, and all of that. I really enjoyed talking to you guys, and it's been great, and I'm really excited to see what you guys do in the future.
Absolutely. I guess we could talk for hours, but then people will be like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us as well, and thank you for doing this. I think this is the only podcast on the flight sim community, and it's great that people are doing content like this.
Yeah, we have a monopoly. Woo!